Mr. Bhatia, I'm going to come to you first. What are you making of India-EU deal? Piyush Goyal called it the mother of all deals, and then we heard Ursula von der Leyen at Davos also terming it as the mother of all deals at a time when, the trades are fragmented, tariffs have become a buzzword. What does this deal signal for you?
Well, it certainly is a very, very big deal. It's been almost 2 decades in the making. And there are a number of complex issues, some of which I'm sure are still to be sorted out. But it is, as you said, it represents something like a quarter of humanity. It represents a quarter of the world's GDP. And therefore, it is certainly a very, very big deal. But the hyperbole aside, I think it's important to also note a strategic component. First of all, dealing with the present US unpredictability and volatility of decision making. Secondly, strategically, dealing with overdependence on China. And thirdly, giving the message that globalization is not dead. It is still workable, it still provides benefit to everybody. And all we need to do is to have deals which provide mutual benefit to the participants. So overall, I would say it is a very, very significant achievement, but we will see the fine print on the 27th. There are a number of other issues which will remain to be negotiated, including, for instance, the investment side, as well as the geographical indication side. But I think it is going to be a very sizable deal.
All right. Ambassador Bhatia, I think I completely agree with Professor Bawa, given that both sides are understanding the urgency and there is political willingness, to agree. And one of the agreements that we thought will take a while was the agreement on agriculture, to exclude agriculture from the India-EU deal. It's one of the stumbling blocks that India continues to face when it comes to the US. So it does look like, from the contours of it and from the precursor, the kind of statements that we've seen both the sides making, that both sides are willing to let go of what could be sensitive, to their own economies.
I think it is a wise, pragmatic decision. Because there are several red lines in India about agriculture and about dairy. And if you get into that, it's an area of landmines. So on both sides.
Yeah.
European agriculture is heavily subsidized still. So if once you get into that kind of discussion, I don't think there's going to be an end to that. So I think the two parties have been wise to keep that aside and move on into important areas where you can do business. Now, I would just like to add what Irina said about regulatory stability. I think that's a very important point. Traders on both sides, they value the issue of regulatory stability the most because they want to know what to expect when they export their products. Now, let me just point to 2 or 3 issues which have been raised by you. One is, of course, the CBAM issue, the Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism of the European Union. And you asked whether Indian companies can adjust to these new stringent requirements. I think on 2 levels. First of all, the 2 sides are still negotiating on whether there can be a middle path on CBAM. But secondly, from the industry side, the large steel industry of India, and steel is a major export item for India into Europe, they are making adjustments already. For instance, many of them are shifting to electric arc furnaces, which are less carbon intensive. They are talking about introducing green hydrogen and so on. So from the side of Indian business, I think they are making the necessary changes in their production processes to accommodate the European requirement. But at the same time, I think India has legitimate expectations that Europe will provide some sympathy to medium and small enterprises of India when it applies the CBAM. Second issue I would like to talk about is digital trade. And I think that's a very, very important area for both sides. Now, as you know, the Europeans have their own data protection rules, the GDPR, and India has its own, the DPDPA. And I think it is important to synchronize the two so that India can obtain data secure status in Europe for its digital exports. And I think this is a major bridge to cross for both sides. I hope they are able to do that. The third point I'd like to make is a very few days back, the Europeans withdrew the GSP benefits on a large number of Indian exports to the European Union. And there were substantial benefits, especially for our small exporters.
Right.
So to that extent, much of the tariff benefits that are being provided in the New Deal will compensate for the GSP withdrawal. And the last point I'd like to make is about public procurement. And I think there's a huge market in India for public procurement. And India, I think, has done liberalized it to some extent for the UK FTA. And I think something similar can be expected from this FTA as well. Thank you.